What if I told you that there was a queen who spent 20 years of her reign visibly pregnant, her belly swelling with what everyone believed were future heirs to the throne, only to discover that she had been carrying nothing but air and madness? What if I told you that this wasn't just a medical condition, but possibly the most elaborate royal deception in history, or perhaps something far more sinister? Today, we're diving into the horrifying true story of Queen Isabella the Barren, whose phantom pregnancies became the stuff of nightmares and whose desperate attempts to produce an heir led to one of the most disturbing chapters in medieval European history. Our story begins in the year 1347 in the kingdom of Valdoria, a small but wealthy realm nestled between France and the Holy Roman Empire. Queen Isabella had married King Edmund III when she was just 16 years old, and the pressure to produce an heir was immediate and overwhelming. The kingdom needed a successor, and Isabella's worth as a queen was measured entirely by her ability to birth a future king. But month after month, year after year, Isabella's womb remained empty. The court physicians examined her constantly, prescribing everything from blessed relics to ground unicorn horn. The pressure was driving her to the edge of sanity when, in 1352, something changed. Isabella announced she was with child. The entire kingdom rejoiced. Church bells rang for 3 days straight, and nobles from across Europe sent congratulations. But as the months passed, something wasn't right. Isabella's belly grew enormous, far larger than any pregnancy the court had ever seen. She complained of violent movements within her womb, claiming the child was fighting to get out with the fury of a demon. But when the time came for delivery, nothing happened. The royal physicians waited. The midwives prepared their tools. The entire court held its breath. Days turned to weeks. Isabella's belly remained swollen, but no child emerged. Then, as mysteriously as it had grown, her stomach began to deflate, like a punctured bladder. Within a week, she was flat as a board, and there was no trace of any pregnancy. The court was baffled. The physicians declared it a miracle of God that had been taken back due to some unknown sin. But Isabella had a different explanation. She claimed the child had been stolen from her womb by dark forces, spirited away in the night by demons who envied the royal bloodline. You might think this would end the story, but you'd be wrong. Because just 6 months later, Isabella announced she was pregnant again. And again, her belly swelled to an impossible size. And again, when the time came for birth, nothing emerged but disappointment and whispers of witchcraft. This pattern continued for 20 years, 20 years of phantom pregnancies, each one more bizarre than the last. Isabella would swell like a balloon, claim to feel violent movements within her womb, and then deflate when the time came for delivery. The court began to fracture. Some believed she was blessed by God, but cursed by the devil. Others whispered that she was a witch herself, using dark magic to simulate pregnancy in a desperate attempt to maintain her position as queen. But the truth, as recorded by the royal physician Brother Marcus in his secret journal, was far more disturbing. Isabella wasn't just experiencing phantom pregnancies. According to his notes, she had developed an obsession with being pregnant that bordered on the supernatural. She would stuff her dresses with cloth animal bladders filled with water, and even, in the most horrifying accounts, the corpses of stillborn animals. Brother Marcus wrote that during one examination, when Isabella claimed to be 8 months pregnant, he felt something moving beneath her skin that was decidedly not human. His journal describes a writhing mass of serpentine creatures that seemed to respond to his touch. Whether this was his imagination, Isabella's deception, or something genuinely supernatural, we'll never know. The most disturbing account comes from Isabella's final pregnancy in 1372. By this time, she was 51 years old, far past the age of natural childbirth, but her belly swelled larger than ever before, and she claimed this child would be the demon prince who would rule over all kingdoms. The court was in a state of constant terror. Strange sounds emanated from Isabella's chambers at night, described as the crying of 1,000 infants and the scratching of claws against stone. When the time came for this final delivery, Isabella locked herself in her chambers for 9 days. The sounds coming from within were so horrifying that several guards fled their posts. On the 9th day, the sounds stopped. When the doors were finally broken down, they found Isabella collapsed on her bed, her stomach flat, surrounded by what the chronicle describes as remnants too vile to record in God's tongue. Isabella died 3 days later, raving about the children that had been stolen from her by the hungry dark. Her final words, according to Brother Marcus, were "They're still inside me, clawing to get out." But here's where the story takes an even more sinister turn. After Isabella's death, several women in the kingdom began experiencing similar phantom pregnancies. They would swell with impossible children, carry them for months, only to deflate with nothing to show but madness and despair. The phenomenon spread like a plague, affecting dozens of women across the realm. The church declared it a curse upon the land, brought on by Isabella's unholy obsession with false pregnancies. Exorcists were brought in from Rome. Holy water was sprinkled on every pregnant woman in the kingdom, and several suspected witches were burned at the stake. But the phantom pregnancies continued for decades after Isabella's death. Some historians believed that Isabella had discovered something, tapped into some primal horror that connected the desire for motherhood with dark, supernatural forces. Others suggest that her elaborate deceptions had created a form of mass hysteria that infected the entire kingdom. The kingdom of Valdoria eventually fell into civil war as noble families fought over succession in the absence of any legitimate heirs. The royal line died with Isabella, and within 50 years, the kingdom itself had been absorbed by neighboring realms. Erased from history like the phantom children Isabella claimed to carry. Modern medical experts who have studied the chronicles suggest that Isabella suffered from pseudocyesis, or phantom pregnancy, combined with what we would now recognize as severe mental illness. The extreme swelling described in the accounts could have been caused by tumors, fluid retention, or deliberate deception using foreign objects. But the supernatural elements of the story, the spreading phantom pregnancies, the inhuman movements, Brother Marcus claimed to feel the horrifying sounds from Isabella's final confinement, these remain unexplained. Were they the products of medieval superstition and poor record-keeping? Or was there something genuinely otherworldly about Isabella's condition? Some researchers have suggested that Isabella may have been one of the first documented cases of what we now call Munchausen syndrome, deliberately faking pregnancies for attention and sympathy. But the physical evidence described in the chronicles, the actual swelling, the movements felt by multiple witnesses, suggests something more complex was occurring. There are whispers, even today, that in certain remote villages, descended from Val population, women still occasionally experience phantom pregnancies that mirror Isabella's condition. These modern cases are quickly hushed up and treated as medical anomalies. But locals speak of Isabella's curse and the hungry darkness that still seeks to fill empty wombs with nothing but despair. The story of Queen Isabella the Barren serves as a horrifying reminder of the pressures placed on women throughout history to produce heirs, and how that pressure could drive someone to madness, or worse. Whether her phantom pregnancies were the result of medical conditions, deliberate deception, supernatural forces, or some combination of all three, they represent one of the most disturbing chapters in royal history. In a world where a woman's value was measured entirely by her ability to bear children, Isabella chose to carry the illusion of motherhood for 20 years rather than face the reality of her empty womb. But in doing so, she may have opened a door to something far darker than simple medical fraud. The next time you hear about a medical mystery or an unexplained pregnancy, remember Queen Isabella and her 20 years of carrying nothing but air and madness. Because sometimes, the most horrifying monsters aren't the ones that exist, but the ones we create in our desperate attempts to become something we can never be. And if you ever find yourself in the ruins of what was once Valdoria, listen carefully to the wind through the broken stones. Some say you can still hear the crying of Isabella's phantom children, forever clawing to be born from wombs that were always empty. What do you think about Queen Isabella's story? Was she a victim of medical conditions and societal pressure? Or did she tap into something genuinely supernatural in her desperate quest for motherhood? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this dive into one of history's most disturbing royal mysteries. Make sure to subscribe for more forgotten tales of horror and madness from the past. Remember, history is full of stories they don't want you to know, and we're here to uncover every terrifying detail. Until next time, keep questioning what you think you know about the past, because the truth is always stranger and more horrifying than the stories we're told.